Ladies and gentlemen, we can begin now because people will probably continue to connect into the live session, but we'll go ahead and get started. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where in the country you're joining us from. Welcome to Winning the War for Talent webinar by Cubiks. This is a web-based online session arranged by Madinah Institute of Leadership and Entrepreneurship. We are glad you joined us today. I am Ali Jaffrey representing MILE and will be moderating this webinar today. I think I have corresponded with most of you who have joined over the email and are here today. We are thankful to Catherine Wilton and Martin Adams who have given us some time and will be presenting their views shortly. You will also be able to download a copy of this presentation in the PDF or PPT format through our blog later on. We would request that you please hold your questions until the end of this presentation. We will give you a chance to ask them interactively. Quick words about speakers. As speakers introduction, Catherine Wilton, Managing Consultant, Cubiks, Middle East and Africa. Catherine, a chartered occupational psychologist with primary responsibility for the Middle East and Africa region of Cubiks. Catherine has a wealth of experience in delivery across various sectors within the region. She enjoys working with clients to provide an approach tailored specifically to the needs and requirements of each client. Catherine has experience in a range of occupational psychology areas such as recruitment and development, human factors, leadership and management, and development, and design of HR processes and tools to support ongoing organizational progress and development. Martin Adams, Managing Director at Propel, a Cubiks client service provider. Martin is an accomplished and innovative business psychologist with extensive commercial experience with a range of public and private sector organizations through the UK, Europe, Middle East, and New Zealand. Martin's core interests lie in the application of psychology to the world to support organizations in the development of their talent, support organizations in objective assessments and coaching. He has worked in various consulting roles with world-leading consultancies, including Cubiks, SHL, and Hudson, with a proven track record of designing and delivering talent management solutions intentionally. Now, quick brief words about housekeeping items. If you are having trouble with the webinar application, please do log out and log in again. And somehow, if you get kicked off at any time, just reconnect using the instructions sent to you via email. With that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Catherine and Martin. I would have to invite them as presenters, so you guys have to bear with me for just a second. Martin, can you hear us? Martin and Catherine.
I can hear you. Ali, good morning. Can you hear us okay?
Yes, I can hear you, and I believe all of us can hear you. So thank you very much for giving us time to present this, and the floor is all yours now.
Okay, Ali, thanks very much, and good morning, everyone. Ali, thanks for that kind introduction there as well. It's our pleasure to be presenting to you this morning and just share some insights on winning the war for talent. And I'll talk a little bit more shortly about exactly what we mean by this winning the war for talent, because the terminology has changed over the years as various sort of economic downturns, things have happened in the sort of world of work in the last decade. But just to introduce ourselves a little bit more, Ali gave a bit of background about myself. My name is Martin Adams. I'm a business psychologist by background. I'm managing director for Propel, a consultancy which focuses on the application of talent management within the Middle East and Europe. I work with a number of different companies within the region, with the likes of SABIC, of Ogen Industries with BASF. My background is very much in talent management and the application of business psychology. So it's my pleasure to be here today speaking to you. And I'll hand over to Catherine to introduce herself.
Yes, hello all. Thank you also from my side for inviting us to do this webinar. Ali's already given a bit of a background to myself, but just to add to that, I've looked after the Middle East and Africa region for some time now for Cubiks. My background is occupational psychology. I have quite a lot of involvement in recruitment and development initiatives for organisations. Cubiks as a company, we're a global HR recruiting and development company. We work with a lot of high-profile clients to support their internal initiatives. One thing we do an awful lot of quite well is we work with companies that have unique requirements. And hopefully in some of the case studies we're going to be talking through, you'll get a bit more of a flavour of a different way of going about recruitment and development.
Okay, thanks, Catherine. And just to explain a little bit more about the relationship between Cubiks and Propel here, we work very, very closely with Cubiks as a client service provider, using Cubiks tools and assessment solutions to help us delivering really thought-leading talent management interventions to our clients, hence the relationship there. Now, we seem to have a bit of a delay on the slides here. We're still stuck on the first page, but just to, in the interest of keeping things progressing, I'll talk through the agenda for this webinar. That the slides should be up very shortly. The approach we'll be taking is firstly having a brief overview of what do we mean by talent. What's the definition of it? Why is talent important within the business? Then looking more specifically at defining talent management and looking again at why that's so important. Then we really get into the theme of this webinar, which is around winning the war for talent, thinking about the concepts of that, why it's so important to have effective talent management strategies within your organization. The way we intend to do this is really a case study approach, so helping you to understand what other successful organizations are doing, and hopefully by doing a more sort of narrative case study approach, giving you some visibility of what some of the best practices are with some of our own clients and other organizations as well that we perhaps haven't worked with directly, but we know are working on best practice talent management. So, moving right along. Okay, so first of all, what we want to explore really is what we mean by talent. Now, talent is really unique to your organization and your organizational context. So there's a quote there saying, talent is only talent if you can use it. So people might have a raft of skills, competencies, knowledge, experience, which are of value. But what you need to ensure is if they are of value to the roles and requirements of your organization. So firstly, in defining talent, it's really what are the specific experiences and knowledge, i.e. the human capital, what someone has currently that they can bring to a role. And also thinking more broadly in terms of their potential, their personal attributes, things like their values, their attitudes, their personality, their style, and the competencies, the behavior they have the potential to demonstrate in the future. So thinking of that second area there on the bottom of that circle looking at potential, this is really a key element of what we mean by talent. It's not just looking at immediate need for talent. Talent is very much a future-focused idea. Understanding what the latent potential is for people and getting an understanding of how you can leverage that within your business. Thinking of talent management, there's a quote at the top there defining this as an integrated, dynamic process which enables organizations to define, acquire, and develop the talent it needs to meet its strategic objectives. And I just want to highlight that last couple of words there around strategic objectives here. Effective talent management needs to be closely aligned to the strategic business objectives. It needs to go hand in hand with what you're trying to achieve as a business. So whatever your talent acquisition, your development, your retention strategies are, they must be aligned to your strategic objectives in order to deliver the outcomes you need. So going into a little bit more detail here, so a set of organizational processes designed to attract, develop, progress, motivate, and retain key people. So firstly thinking of the attraction of individuals, development of them in the organization, progression and promotion, and also how you motivate them in order to retain them within your business. The second point there, if you think of increasingly large organizations, perhaps multinational organizations, there needs to be a coherent approach to succession planning and development across the business, a consistency of practices across different regions and territories to make sure that your talent management strategy is aligned across the entire business. I guess what this all boils down to is really a very tight integration of all your HR practices across the employee life cycle, which we'll touch on shortly. So not having distinct and isolated HR practices, having those all aligned and supporting each other. So the next slide, as it pops up in the next few seconds, thinking a little bit about why talent management is so important. Why is it essential to invest in talent management? And we really want to explore this from the viewpoint of both the organizational perspective and the employee perspective. And I guess the best way of looking at this is what are the risks that happen or that can arise if talent management doesn't occur? And first of all, if we look from the organizational perspective, one of the key signs of a lack of talent management is gaps in the leadership pipeline. You simply don't have a succession pipeline in place to produce the leaders with the skills, with the experience you need for the future demands of the business. And this really leads on to the next point. So if you have key employees retiring, perhaps key leaders intending to retire in the next few years, a symptom of lack of talent management could be that you simply don't have that successor lined up, or that the successor really doesn't have the skills and knowledge needed to fill that vacancy when it arises. Another symptom can be problems developing the new skill to meet future business needs. So without clear visibility of what your people strategy is and how that aligns to your business strategy, it's very, very difficult to get a clear understanding of what are the skills and competencies that your people of the future will require. What does the talent in the next 5 years, or the talent requirements in the next 5 years look like? Thus, a common symptom can be perhaps development interventions being focused on the wrong areas, the wrong skills being developed, and this then leads to a gap in particular skill areas in the future. Another very valid point here is simply a lack of new blood or fresh perspective within the organization. If there's not sufficient mobility within the organization, that you're not moving your talent throughout the organization, giving them new experiences, helping them to share knowledge throughout the business, and perhaps failing to introduce newcomers to the business, there's a real risk of this kind of groupthink where there's no challenge to existing practice or policy or the way things are done, simply because people are so entrenched in the way things have been done historically. From the employee perspective, why is talent management so important? Well, the lack of talent management from an employee perspective often results in lack of engagement and motivation. So simply they don't have clarity on career path. They don't have clarity on the development opportunities available to them. And what's missing is a real a connection and alignment between an individual's values and the organization. In psychology, we often talk about the psychological contract of what the employee expects and what the employer delivers. Now, if this psychological contract isn't maintained, this results in a lack of engagement and motivation. And unfortunately, what this often results in is reduced performance levels, or in the worst case, increased turnover and attrition. People simply don't stay with the organization. So this is summed up in the final point there, in a decrease of talent loyalty, we call it. And this is very much a contemporary issue in talent management, is how to increase talent loyalty. So those are some of the key symptoms, I guess, of what happens when talent management doesn't occur effectively within organizations. Okay, coming on to the next slide now. This is really coming to the theme of this webinar, which is around winning the war for talent. And just to give a bit of background for those of you who aren't familiar with that term, it was originally coined by McKinsey about 14 years ago, I think, was really to describe the increasingly competitive recruitment selection landscape and the increasing importance for businesses to really attract the right talent, to select in the right talent, and then to keep them there, to keep them motivated and engaged so they don't leave, so they continue to add value to the organization, so a business can continue to leverage that human capital that is present. So the talent management cycle, which is illustrated there, this is the general process we're going to follow for the, I guess, the case study analysis, which we're going to move into next. And we'll talk about each of these elements individually as we work through. Okay. So the first stage in the talent management cycle really kind of boils down to talent attraction. So the current employment context or market, if you like, has changed quite significantly in the last few years. A lot of this comes down to the largely global recession of 2008 and 2009, which changed the recruitment market quite considerably. There's now a substantial pool of talent within the market. There's a lot of joblessness currently, but there's also a lot of discontent of people harboring intentions to leave. So there's a lot of mobility in the employer market at present. The challenge from a talent attraction perspective is with such a large pool of talent, it's now even more important than ever for organizations to focus on attracting the right people to apply for roles within their business, not simply casting the net so wide that it's to attract anyone. It's creating very unique, focused attraction strategies to attract those high potential candidates that are the best fit for the culture and values of your organization. So to explore this in a little bit more depth, thinking about what do the most successful organizations do, from our experience and from research within the industry as well, one of the most important things is your employer brand. So defining what the employer value proposition is for your organization. What is it that you offer to a potential employee or newcomer? Why would they want to come and work for your organization? So thinking about things like beyond salary, remuneration, thinking about development opportunities, career pathway, getting very clear definition about your brand as an employer. This is differentiated from your organizational brand. This is really just focused on what you offer your employees. Successful organizations also leverage relationships, so making good use of candidate referrals, of networks to identify through sort of less formal channels potential talent within the industry. And similarly, leading on from this, leveraging technology such as social media. I don't know if those of you are familiar with LinkedIn, has proven an invaluable tool for identifying talent very, very cost effectively and quickly and building up relationships with potential talent. Also, successful organizations define a clear talent attraction strategy, which is very much based on the corporate values. So it's very much aligned to giving a clear picture to potential applicants of what life would be like working within your organization. And in doing so, on point 5, creating a very, very unique attraction approach. Research shows and experience shows that those organizations with the most unique standout attraction techniques are able to attract the top talent and sort of seize that opportunity to get in early. And what we're going to move into now is a case study conducted on a piece of work conducted by Cubiks that Catherine's going to talk you through next. So I'll hand over to Catherine at this point to talk through the talent attraction case study.
Okay, so just following on the talent attraction, what we've done here is we've chosen case studies that are a little bit more unique in terms of their approach. And L'Oreal certainly is unique. L'Oreal is a global organization in cosmetics, and one of the challenges they face is actually attracting Generation Y men to apply for a company like L'Oreal. So to get over that challenge, they needed to come up with a unique and yet best practice attraction approach. This is very much a self-select-in tool. So at this stage, it's about attracting the right people to want to come and apply for a job at L'Oréal. So the platform that was designed is a platform that's currently online. You can actually go and look at it yourselves as well. A platform that is called Reveal. Reveal is a games-based platform. So when the candidate is completing a number of psychometrics, it feels as though they're involved in a game. So a very unique way of looking at recruiting and checking the capability and also the capability and the future capability of candidates. It uses tools such as a situational judgment questionnaire. Now, a situational judgment questionnaire is a way of giving the candidate a feel for what it's like to work for that organisation. So in terms of L'Oréal, the candidate gets an opportunity to experience different departments within L'Oréal and to get a real feel of whether they think they would be a good match for that department. On top of that, there are other elements of assessment within it, such as ability test questionnaires as well. Yet it's not the same as you would see with a traditional recruitment process of personality assessment, followed by ability test, followed by situational judgment questionnaire. With L'Oréal, the platform is very integrated. So actually the assessment process becomes quite fun for the candidate to complete. I've just moved the slide along one to give you a screenshot of the L'Oréal platform. Hopefully it should be showing on your screens about now. Similarly, it doesn't look like a traditional attraction or recruitment platform. It very much is about reflecting the brand, the culture and values of L'Oréal. So, of course, this type of cartoon-based platform isn't appropriate for all organisations, but that's the important part of making sure you understand your brand and the image you want to provide to candidates at those early stages.
Okay, thanks, Catherine. I mean, that's an excellent example of something that's quite thought-leading and innovative in terms of talent attraction. And if you want to do a Google search for L'Oréal Reveal, you can actually go in and access the systems yourselves just to see how creative that is. Okay, in the interest of time, we'll move on to the next stage in the talent management cycle now, which is around talent acquisition. So, as I alluded to earlier, the current job market means in some cases there are massive numbers of applicants for some positions, or conversely, for specific roles in an organization, there's simply a lack of qualified candidates. Now, the impact of hiring the wrong candidate is quite significant. There's real risk of bringing the wrong people into the organization. So naturally, you need to be very careful in your selection practices. But to make life difficult, at the same time, organizations are under increasing pressure to actually keep costs of recruitment down, to keep time to hire down, and improve the productivity of their people at the same time. So in terms of talent acquisition, what we're really referring to here is how organizations go about assessing and selecting those candidates to bring into the organization. And from our experience, what are the most successful organizations doing? Well, the first step always is to have a clear definition of the required skills and behaviors in the role. So having very clear visibility of the competencies and the behaviors that someone needs to demonstrate in order to perform effectively and deliver results. Successful organizations typically use objective assessment techniques, so scientifically robust tools and assessment solutions to evaluate candidate potential and fit for the role. So getting some insight into how a candidate is likely to behave, giving some scientific predictions of their performance if they're to come into the business. Successful organizations also provide a realistic job preview, and this is critical. So it's giving potential candidates a very clear picture of what life will be like in the organization, and not construing a different picture of what the job will actually look like, being very clear about what the tasks and responsibilities will be. And also what we're seeing increasing demand for is actually providing hiring managers with the fundamental skills to identify top talent. So upskilling hiring managers in things like test use, interview skills, best practice competency-based interviewing, to take the demand off HR personnel to ensure that hiring managers, those people who will be directly responsible for managing this talent, have a key role in actually assessing and selecting these individuals. And to illustrate this and bring this to life a little bit more, I'm going to hand over to Catherine again at this point to talk through an example with a company called Boots, which some of you may be familiar with, but Catherine will give you a bit more background now.
Okay, with Boots, again, a little bit of a unique approach.
Sorry to interrupt. There was a comment or concern rather. I think your voice is little. There's a slight echo on it, so maybe you want to be as near as Martin near the mic.
Sorry, Ali, is that Catherine's voice is a bit quiet?
Yeah, Catherine's voice. There's an echo. I think she's sort of. I mean, it sounds like she's a bit far away from the mic.
Is this any better?
Yeah, this is better now.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you for letting me know.
Sorry to pitch in.
No, need to be able to hear what's being said, of course.
All right, you may proceed now, please.
Thank you. Okay, so with Boots, again, they wanted a unique approach to talent acquisition. So it's similar to L'Oreal, but this time we're actually looking at screening out candidates. For Boots, the situation they had was that they had a very high volume number of applicants for roles such as customer assistant roles. And when you've got high volumes, then obviously if you're using a traditional approach, you can end up with high amounts of HR resource required to screen out. So Boots needed an online web-based system that would automatically screen out candidates that weren't considered to have the right talent for Boots. And we did this in an automatic way so that the platform will actually automatically screen out those that are not appropriate for progression to the next stage. Also absolutely essential for Boots was to make sure that there was best practice in terms of the tools that were used on the platform. The platform itself consists of multiple numbers of tools and multiple test versions as well. So what I mean there is that personality assessment questions would be asked of candidates, and also ability test questions and situational judgment questions, but in a rotating format. So candidate A and candidate B will see different questions, and that obviously has key importance when you're looking at high volumes. It gives you much more confidence in terms of screening candidates into the next stage. What was important as well for Boots was that it looked and felt like Boots. So they used real-life images for the platform. It's a bit like a day in the life experience for the candidate. They have an opportunity to go through various parts of Boots and to understand what it's like to work for that particular department. That way you get a good match between the candidate and what their aspirations are, the type of company they want to work for, and the Boots culture and values. On your screen now you should be able to just see a screenshot of where the candidate is being introduced to a manager and talked through the next stages of the process. Just to give you a bit of an idea of the volumes for Boots, the platform was released only very recently, June this year, and already 182,000 candidates have accessed this platform. So if you can think of the benefits of reducing the HR resource on numbers like that, it's quite significant for Boots. What we're trying to do here is make sure that the right people, the right talent, get through to the later interview stages of the assessment process. And of course, the knock-on impact of getting the right talent there means that you've got happier people working in the organisation and therefore happier customers.
Okay. So again, another real-life example, if you like, of quite an innovative talent acquisition approach of using a combination of psychometric tools and techniques, robust assessment tools, integrated into a very interactive, sort of realistic job preview for applicants there. Moving into the next section of the talent management cycle here, we're shifting away really from the attraction and acquisition of newcomers in the organization to really focus on what to do with the talent that you already have. What do you do with the people already within your organization? And so for an organization to get the best out of its people, it's really essential to match the talent with the task. So what this comes down to is really ensuring that you have the right people doing the right job at the right time. So thinking a bit about what successful organizations are doing to ensure this, well, as I mentioned before, firstly having that very clear link between business strategy and people strategy, ensuring that there's clear visibility of what kinds of people are needed now and in the future. Also having very clear definition of the roles that are required now and in the future, and breaking that down in terms of the skills and behavior that underlie them. Successful organizations also regularly benchmark and map their talent through things such as talent audits and objective assessment. So regularly getting a sense of where the talent lies within the organization and potentially where the gaps might exist. This helps them invest in developing their people by identifying specific development needs within the organization and ensuring that talent pipeline or that flow through of talented individuals continues to occur. Also, successful organizations really foster a culture of talent mobility within the business. So ensuring there are mechanisms for people to shift within the business, to get experiences in other departments, sections, or perhaps move regionally to other geographies to knowledge share and to gain more experience. And to bring this to life a little more, what I'll talk through to you with you next is a case study for a piece of work that Propel have been doing with a Saudi family company. Unfortunately, due to the sensitivity of this project, we can't reveal the name of the company, but it's a large Saudi family company specializing in the construction and asset management business. Now, the challenge for this organization was that they were undergoing a significant restructure and realignment and streamlining of their business. So what they needed to do was conduct a process to really audit their talent, to understand where the talent existed within their business and where restructuring or redundancy decisions needed to be made. They needed to ensure this was done fairly and consistently, that all people were given an equal opportunity. So the approach we used with this particular organization was firstly to define the skills and competencies that they needed for the future. That was step one. What we then proceeded to do was benchmarking of their capability using a range of psychometrics such as personality questionnaires and reasoning ability tests like the Cubiks PAPI tool and the Cubiks Reasoning for Business tools as well. What this enabled us to do is provide the client organization with very robust data on where talent lay within the business, who had the core cognitive strengths, the mental abilities, who had the core competencies in order to perform in the future. What we also provided in this case was comprehensive developmental feedback for individuals so they could actually learn from this experience and focus their developmental efforts more by raising their self-awareness and identifying where their strengths and potential development needs might be. Ultimately, what this allowed the company to do was, during a very difficult period, maintain a very fair and standardized process to help maintain morale, but also give people insight into where their talent lay, and also from an organizational perspective, who the key talent was within the organization. And just to illustrate very quickly on the next slide, which is coming up imminently, just to give you some visibility of the kinds of feedback report which was produced for these individuals, just to give them a sense of their competency potential and how that compared with others within their peer group in the organization, and with some development tips there to help them structure their own development activities. Okay. Moving along into the next stage of the talent management cycle, we're looking at talent development next. And I guess the key thing to keep in mind here is really organizations' best and least costly source of talent really can be found more often than not already within the business. It's the people you already have within your organization that possess the skills and knowledge. It might just be that you haven't identified that yet. And some of that comes back to the talent audit that I spoke about earlier. So by investing in these targeted and very practical development programs, organizations are able to grow their people, release that latent talent, nurture those skills to equip them to face the roles and requirements of future business needs. And on the plus side, talent development has, research consistently shows, a very strong link between employee development and their engagement. Employees who are developed and nurtured and grown are far more likely to perform better and stay with the business. So again, looking at what the most successful organizations tend to do, the first point is to look beyond current performance data, not just focus on how the employee is functioning or performing currently, but also combine that with objective measures of future potential to see how they could potentially perform in the future. Again, using some kind of formal evaluation or assessment technique to identify where the key strengths and development needs exist, not only within organizations, but within the individuals, but within the organization as a whole. What this then enables organizations to do is focus development interventions on those areas which are the highest priority and will have the most impact on business performance. And in a time where development and training budgets might be limited, this is essential to ensure organizations are appropriating development budget in the right areas. Successful organizations also look beyond competencies, so thinking about the aspirations and drivers of their people, understanding what's motivating them. And also upskilling their managers, their people managers, to provide ongoing feedback, to establish that culture of continuous learning within the organization so people can raise their self-awareness, understand where there's room to grow, and to do something about it. And to illustrate this a bit further, Catherine's going to talk to you now about a case study with Goodyear looking at talent identification and development.
Okay, so just to give you a brief overview of talent development within Goodyear, this was an initiative that took place initially in 2009. What Goodyear wanted to do is they recognized the importance of their internal employees, and they wanted to make sure they could identify those that would support the future growth of the organization. And they wanted to be proactive in their approach. They had competency assessments in place, but what they were really missing was a tool which would identify individuals with high potential. So not just competencies, but those dimensions that differentiate high potential people from everyday employees. So we worked with Goodyear on this initiative to create a tool called the Talent Index. Now the Talent Index was designed based on HR and psychometric research and through a number of focus groups with organizations to make sure that the dimensions chosen were in line with the real business objectives, so it would fit the actual need of the client. The Talent Index is a tool which is hosted online. It was absolutely essential that it was user-friendly and that it would collate information from a number of different sources. The tool actually focuses on 9 core areas or 9 core dimensions, and these, according to research, are considered to be areas that are indicative of high potential. So you can see on your screen there a bit of an idea of these, well, it's actually an illustration of the report. Areas like drive to achieve are things that tend to be an identifier for those considered to have high potential. And this sort of information for Goodyear was then fed into part of a talent development program where those identified would move on and be progressed and stretched.
Okay. So again, a good example of the importance of identifying where the talent lies within the organization to ensure developmental effort is focused on the right people in the right way. Again, I'm conscious of time, so I'll move through this last section fairly swiftly so we leave some time for questions at the end. But sort of closing the loop on the talent cycle, the final element I'll look at we'll look at here is talent retention. And just to very briefly share some research with you, I mean, you're probably aware in your own organizations that significant investment is made in recruiting, training people, developing staff. But research consistently shows that 1 in 4 new recruits will resign in the first 6 months, 1 in 5 resign in the following year. Over 50% of people recruited will leave within the 2 years after they join. And in general, 3 in 4 organizations are experiencing employee retention difficulties. Now, just to caveat this a bit, this research was conducted within Europe. So but in general, the sense we get within the Middle Eastern market as well is these figures aren't way off. That recruitment and retention, especially with high potential people, is increasingly a problem within the region. So in brief, what are the successful organizations doing? Well, first of all, they're regularly assessing employee engagement. And I have to stress this, they're taking action based on the findings. Unsuccessful organizations, conversely, might do the employee engagement survey once a year, but they don't do anything on it. And that can actually cause more problems and disengage people. So the key thing is to assess engagement and take action based on the findings. It's about developing that culture of feedback and self-improvement, so helping people to grow and learn about themselves more. Successful organizations evaluate and understand the career aspirations of their people. If we sort of go to the front end of the cycle, well, the best way to retain people is to get the right people in the job in the first place, is to select in those people with a clear match to the values and culture of the organization. And for those that do choose to leave the organization, it's important that businesses capture the attrition data and exit data to try and understand why people are leaving. What are the trends and patterns, and what can be done to fix that if there's a systemic problem causing people to leave the organization. And finally, just to bring talent retention to life in a case study here, this is a case example of some work done by a partner of ours in the UK called Talent Drain, which is a business which focuses on employee retention. They were working with the FSA, which is the Financial Services Authority in the UK, which regulates the financial services industry. So they're a government and public sector organization. Now, in the last few years, they've undergone massive criticisms and resulted in massive structural changes. And the FSA will essentially cease to exist after, I think, April next year. So they had a real struggle in keeping people engaged and retained within the business, which would potentially no longer exist within the coming years. So what they needed to do was invest significant effort into understanding, the values and motives of people, and use that knowledge to retain that key talent in that transition period. What the solution used here was the implementation of a retention toolkit, so a suite of information gathering tools to support retention activities. So first of all, they integrated an onboarding survey to help hiring managers understand how best to engage newcomers coming into the business. They started regularly rolling out an engagement survey to regularly test the current cultural climate within the organization and look at the broader intention to leave within their people. They also began to implement exit surveys to better understand why people were choosing to leave and what were the real drivers of turnover behavior. a lot of information gathering here, but what this enabled them to do very, very quickly and very proactively is to take action where there were particular areas of the business or practices which were causing people to leave. So in a period of intense change and transition, they had the insight
Martin, I'm sorry, I had lost my connection for just a few minutes. I wasn't attentive in the last 2 minutes, so could you tell me, I mean, is it over the presentation?
Sure, I do. So we just opened up the floor there, Ali.
Okay, all right, yeah, because I'm seeing some hands are being raised, so I apologize for this, ladies and gentlemen. I just had some technical hitch. I lost the last 2 minutes, but I'm glad that I'm back. So let me see, we have certain questions popping up already, and we have a few hands raised. Let me unmute them one by one. So, but before I proceed, just to explain the process, there is an hand icon available on your webinar console. So if you have any questions, feel free to raise a hand, and I will be able to unmute you and give you an opportunity to ask the question directly to Catherine and Martin. The first question, let me go. We have Mr. Noman Ishtiaq. I'm trying to unmute you, Noman. So let me see. Noman, can you hear me? Just a second. Well, let me go to the question board now. Okay, Mike says muted. Noman, somehow I'm unable to unmute you. Can you type your question? So let me try it again now. We're unable to unmute you. So maybe you want to type your question. I have another question already typed in. This one is from Mr. Amir. Mr. Amir is asking, could you please explain the coherent approach towards successful planning? What do you mean by it?
Okay, so a coherent approach to succession planning. Okay, so I guess if we're to look at that stepwise of our sort of best practice approach to succession planning, the initial stage is really to get complete clarity on the role requirements. So what are if you map out the different job families within your organization at different levels, have very clear visibility of the organizational structure, who is where. What you then need to do is really evaluate what are the competencies, the skills that are required in those roles, not just for now, but the future. So getting very clear definition of perhaps the personal attributes, the knowledge, the experience, perhaps the educational background that is required to fill those roles. The next step we'd recommend is really to do a talent audit to really understand, do you have the people within your organization to meet those future requirements? Something such as the talent index that Catherine spoke about is a tool that we use to this end, because what this enables us to do is get visibility of who has the potential against those future job requirements. Or you might embark on different activities such as a development center or in-depth assessment methodology to really evaluate very robustly the kinds of skills and expertise people have. Ultimately, this kind of data gathering and talent audit is essential to give you that understanding of where the gaps in a succession plan might exist. So do you have the people available now to fill that gap? Or what skills do you need to develop within your people in order to have them ready? So for instance, when your current chief exec leaves in 3 years, or your MD, who is the successor that has all the skills needed? And if no one is visible now or present now, is thinking about how you can deliver a focused development intervention for the most high potential candidates to get them to the place they need to be. And Catherine, please.
Yeah, just to add to that, I mean, just on top of what Martin has said, a lot of it is also making sure that you're comfortable with where the organisation is going. So if you're considering a change in direction for the organisation, what you should be thinking about is the talent required for 5 to 10 years' time. Perhaps if you're moving markets or shifting sector, it's absolutely essential that you take that long-term vision when you're considering who would be right to start that development process.
Okay, does that answer your question or give you a bit more
I think that was quite comprehensive, so let us move forward. We have another person, Mr. Ahmed. Ahmed, let me unmute you. Okay, you've been unmuted. Ahmed, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Ahmed, could you please introduce yourself and ask the questions?
Sorry?
Can you please introduce yourself first and then proceed with your question?
Yeah. Okay. This is me, Ahmed Aid. My question is related to me as employer, if you allow me.
Sure.
In organization where is I already, from the perspective of talent, is well deployed. Mm-hmm. However, I'm relying on myself regarding to the personal development, and I receive a lot of offers. And the issue, I love the organization I'm working on, but all the offers that come to me is significantly higher in terms of money and better position than the one I already have currently. I talked to the HR, and still I have no reply from them regarding my development plan or the retention plan. Can you advise me on this perspective? Because the offers I received during the last year, more than 3 offers, and they are reluctant here regarding my development plan. It's a little bit ambiguous for them. They don't have a solid plan for development, and they so far have no plan for retention. What do you think?
Okay, and this is a common situation there, and thanks for the question. I think it's, I think a point I'd like to make initially is that in terms of self-development and your professional development, someone told me a few years ago, and I really took it on board, that no one is going to develop you for you, that ultimately we have to be the owner of our own development and be proactive in pushing that forward. So waiting for others to do it for us or get us on a program, it may happen, but it might not get you where you want to be as soon as you might like. So my first recommendation there is try and be a bit more proactive, perhaps, in seeking out those opportunities for development. If you're not getting what you need within your current organization, be more proactive in seeking out opportunities and sort of being your own master of your development in that respect. Now, the other question about having offers from I guess, competitors or other organizations, I guess my recommendation there, Ahmed, would be to sit down and really clearly map out what your career aspirations and goals are. Really get a clear definition of what is it you value about your role currently, what you enjoy about it. Because for some reason you have stayed with that organization, so there must be something you like about it, but also there's something you're lacking. So if you can try and articulate that, just think about it yourself and write that down, just to see if there's some way to just to objectively compare the opportunities that you have there. Is a role within another organization going to give you what you need? Is it going to meet your values? Or is it just something that's more extrinsic, like perhaps a salary increase or other benefits? Mm-hmm. So unfortunately, there's no easy answer. I mean, a career decision is a very, very important one. I mean, it can be quite life-changing. So what I'd encourage you to do is think beyond just the benefits. Think about broader things with your own goals and aspirations. If you enjoy working for your current organization, then my recommendation would be just be more proactive and try and create those opportunities for development yourself and challenge others to give you more clarity in your career path. And ultimately, you'll need to make that decision for yourself if you're getting what you need there. I think Catherine's going to add something here too.
Just to add to that, when you're listing down where you want to be, just to emphasize what Martin was saying about the type of company that you want to work for, don't forget the importance of the company's culture and values and making sure that those are absolutely aligned to the type of company that you want to work for. That's absolutely essential, otherwise you'll end up moving for extrinsic reasons like money, like a new type of role, but without having the enjoyment of working for a company that matches your internal values.
Absolutely. Does that help, Ahmed?
Yes, very much. But again, it's not easy to answer the question you are proposing. Especially, I'm enjoying my current role. That's why I'm decline previous offers. However, I cannot all the time keep declining. In the case of continuing the current ambiguity regarding the development and package. So you are absolutely right regarding evaluating the culture that could be potential for an offer and measure it based on my internal values and my career aspiration.
Yeah, I think that unfortunately there is no easy answer to it, Ahmed. It's very. This is an exercise for you to really reflect on and you know, make a decision on what's important for you now and in the future. You know, we wish you the best of luck with it. Unfortunately, it isn't an easy decision.
Thank you very much, Mark.
Thank you, Ahmed. And Ahmed, may I ask you just where you calling from and where you joined us from?
Yeah, from Saudi.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much, Ahmed. So I'm going to mute you again and move forward.
Thank you, Ali.
Thanks. I believe if I missed Mr. Hamid Moinuddin. Mr. Hamid, I'm not sure. Did you raise your hand or I missed you? Mr. Hamid, can you hear me? Okay, let's move on. Okay, we have a question. Okay, sorry, Hamid is back. Hamid, can you hear me? I think you raised your hand or you wanted to ask a question. I've unmuted you so you can ask the question. All right, sorry. Let's move on. Okay, let's move to the chat box. We have Noman has written it. Noman Ishtiaq. First of all, thank you very much for a very useful and absolutely brilliant presentation. I work in the consulting industry and I have been struggling with hiring right people for various projects. I have experimented with discussions on TORs, discussions on how the person has delivered on previous projects, discussions on key problems and how the person has dealt them. However, I would be interested in perhaps understanding further the best practice interviews. Thank you.
Okay. Well, it's a great question, and I think it's a great situation to be in. I think some of the things you're doing already is what we'd recommend for best practice interview. You're drawing on past experience. You're investigating how they've dealt with situations in the past. Now, our recommendation around best practice interviews, and these can be used both for selection and development, is making sure the interview is very much embedded in particular criteria or competencies. So our best practice recommendation for an interview is you need to have a very clear definition of what the competencies, the skills and behaviors are that need to be demonstrated by that individual, and to ensure that all questioning is aligned to those. That enables you to give a very fair and consistent and standardized evaluation of individuals. In terms of the competency-based interviewing skills training we do, the aims of our programs are really to give hiring managers the insight into what a competency is. So helping you to define what success looks like in a role, and then to formulate specific questions and a questioning interview technique which goes really deeply into those distinctly job-relevant attributes. Also, good interviewing techniques requires standardized evaluation forms. So it's not a gut feeling on whether someone's given a good interview or not. Then there is some very objective criteria used in the form of a rating form to evaluate that interview performance. But just to say there, I think you're asking the right things, if I've understood that correctly from the question, that you're drawing on past experience and what they've done in the past. A competency-based interview is based on the premise that past behavior is the best predictor of future behavior. So I think you're doing the right thing. It's just perhaps getting a bit more structure around that, using perhaps more of a criterion-based interview approach there. I think, Catherine, to add as well.
Just to add to that, the competency-based approach is absolutely fantastic, and certainly you'll be able to gather a lot of evidence from that. As well, you might consider using some other mechanisms as well, like a personality questionnaire. That personality questionnaire will help with understanding the needs and motivators of that individual, so helping to understand what it is that made them act in a particular way. And that can be particularly helpful when you're thinking about future development and where they might progress next.
Yeah, good points.
Okay. Thank you. Nuwan, if you have any supplementary, since I'm unable to unmute you, so feel free to throw your feedback on the answer you received. Okay, he has written no, thank you, very kind. Okay, let's move forward. Again, gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, you feel free to raise the hands, and I'll be able to unmute you if you have any questions. Let me move forward to the chat questions that I've been receiving. Okay, this one is from Mr. Wasim. Under increasing competitive environment, do you think job seekers are becoming more smarter in selling their artificial and tailored profiles than actual and honest ones?
If I understand your question there correctly, Ali, you cut off a bit. Is the questions around are candidates portraying themselves honestly and openly?
Yeah,
okay.
I think they're touching on the manipulation part of, like answering all those tools.
Right. Okay. I think in general, job seekers are becoming a lot more savvy and knowledgeable about how to, I don't want to say manipulate the process, but perhaps embellish CVs. They know how to approach an interview situation. They're a lot more prepared for the assessment process than perhaps they might have been in the past. So there is that risk now that people are perhaps exaggerating or embellishing their skills and experience. So this really increases the need for very objective and almost cheat-proof mechanisms of assessment. And this is why, as standard in any selection process, we use pretty much cheat-proof tools such as ability testing to make sure they do have those mental reasoning skills that they say they do, but also looking from a behavioral perspective. The way we design our personality tools, or the Cubiks personality tools, ensures that people are very limited in their capability to manipulate. So, for instance, Catherine spoke earlier about the assessment tool with Boots online. Now, the design of that is what's called an ipsative or forced choice format test, which has real advantages in limiting someone's ability to manipulate the questionnaire or to depict themselves in a different way. So just to sort of summarize on that question, I think absolutely yes, candidates are getting very savvy, and perhaps necessarily so, to present themselves more favorably in a selection context. This is why it's becoming increasingly important to implement measures beyond an interview alone, to look at more scientifically based, more robust psychometrics. We find these absolutely essential to get that added layer of insight and reliable insight into a candidate's true potential.
Okay,
Just
great.
to add to that, I mean, to give you a bit of a flavour, actually Cubiks has a personality tool called PAPI, of which there's 2 versions, a normative and an ipsative, and by far the most popular of those versions used globally is the ipsative version, and that's because it's much harder to fake. So I guess candidates are becoming a little bit more in tune with impression management, but there are ways around that to make sure that you get in deep and you really understand the motivators and drivers, you get that competency information so that you can be confident that you're getting a candidate that's right for the role.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. Just Catherine, Martin, for my own clarity, I have a question regarding these questionnaires, the designing the questionnaires and sampling. How important is to have the cultural norm, or is this the cultural norm based on the sampling done within the organization, or a regional based, or how do you guys do it?
Okay, it really varies. It can be both, Ali. I mean, as Catherine alluded to before, in specific business contexts that will produce a company norm. So getting a sense of what the range of behavior or skills or abilities are within an organization. And conversely, sometimes we use more generic norms. So we might use something like a more of an international norm of personality. It really does vary depending on the specific context. What we find especially in the Middle Eastern region, is we tend more towards company-specific norms. And as Catherine mentioned, the ipsative version of questionnaires aren't actually based on a norm. It's purely a sort of, it's almost a norm of the candidate themselves. We don't compare them to other individuals. So essentially the answer is yes to both, Ali. It can be a very company-based norm, which is what we tend to lean to more within the region, or it might be a more generic norm, perhaps sort of managers and professionals internationally, or graduates internationally. It really varies for the context, and we'll always ensure that the most appropriate comparison or norm group is used.
Yeah, I guess if you take the talent index, there is a norm group in the talent index, and that's based on high potential within that client organization. And what we've noticed across clients is there's ever such a small variance between where high potential is across different clients. So we tend to err towards checking that norm works for that particular company.
Okay, okay. But just to supplement, I would like to still sort of question on it, that does that norm, based on the company norm or the culture or the whatever the regional norm, is it based on the new design of questionnaire, or is it based on the existing questionnaire that already designed?
Yeah, to answer that, Ali, it's based on the questionnaire that's designed, and what in the design of any psychometric tool, or a robust psychometric, these are very, very carefully designed instruments, and it's unusual to tweak, I guess, an off-the-shelf tool such as Cubiks PAPI, but there are situations in which we do that, where we use a test item, a specific question, which we know the psychometric properties are very strong, to create perhaps a new collection of questions or a new battery of tests. And an example of that is something around situational judgment questionnaires, which are typically will draw upon a range of items or questions that we know to be good predictors of certain judgment and behavior, to produce, I guess, more of a bespoke or tailored test for an organization, which is more company-specific in its design. So again, the question is, it can be both. Typically, for a more straightforward solution, we'd use a very validated static tool, which we wouldn't change the content. The norm would be based off those items which we know to work very, very well. But there are some situations where we have to design a test from scratch, and we revalidate that and renorm it. So it's not unusual, but slightly less common.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So I think we are running out of time, so I'll just take this one last question that's popped in. It's from Mr. Samir. Mr. Samir has written, hiring passionate people is the buzzword. Consultants are suggesting these days to hire passionate people and write their job descriptions for them rather than hiring them for a specific JD. Do you agree?
Okay, I think that's sort of a controversial thing. I think there's, it comes down to the definition of what a passionate person is. Is this someone that demonstrates energy, enthusiasm, dynamism? Is it that they demonstrate really real diligence to the task? I think that the semantics of passion alone could be debatable. If I make an assumption in what Mr. Samir is inferring there, in some context, perhaps in a sales context, a passionate, outgoing person, if their personality is more outgoing, that could be a real asset in that situation. But what I would caution against is overlooking other elements purely based on passion alone. Someone can be passionate to do a job, but they may not have the skills, abilities, and knowledge to actually do it. There's often something we speak about in terms of someone can inflate their own view of their competence, and as particularly in an interview situation, it's very risky because someone who is passionate, enthusiastic, often can come across a lot more positively in an interview. Like I say, however, they might not actually demonstrate and have the skills and knowledge you need. If you purely need a passionate person to be sort of a client-facing, someone more of a networker, a business developer, then that might be okay, but I'd say in almost all situations you need a broader skill set than passion alone.
Just to add to that, I think it's the case of passionate in what is so true. I mean, what I'd be looking for in the interview process is the evidence that shows me that they're going to be passionate in the right things for the job or for the organisation. So again, it's coming back to that behavioural evidence that demonstrates that they are, in reality, going to drive forward in a particular task or role.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think the final comment there is sort of it's passion for the right thing is essential. That's more looking at motivation. But there's a difference between motive and talent. Someone might be motivated to do something, but they might lack the talent or skill to do it. So it's essential not to overlook that. Okay. Are you there, Ali?
You want to pick this too?
Okay. It seems Ali's disappeared offline there. So just I'm hoping everyone's still able to hear us there. Just to summarize.
I'm back. I'm back. I think I've somehow became in a mute format again. Can you hear me?
Okay, Ali. Sorry, I was just
saying. I think that really brings us towards the end of the webinar. So thank you very much, Catherine and Martin, for your time and willingness to share your information and experiences. Also, thanks to all of you who participated. We are glad you could join us and hope the session was helpful for you guys. I will be emailing you the link to a recorded version of this webinar in a couple of days once it is uploaded on our blog. I will also be distributing to you via email an online evaluation form for this webinar. This will give you a chance to evaluate this session and also suggest additional topics for which you would like to participate in online webinars in future. Your feedback is very valuable to us, so please do take 5 minutes of your time to complete the survey when it lands in your inbox. For more details on our upcoming webinars and programs, please visit our website www.mile.org. Finally, please know that we are available for any additional technical support after this webinar. Feel free to contact me by phone or email if we can be of any additional assistance. And once again, Catherine and Martin, thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of your day, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. No, thank you very much for having us. We've enjoyed it.
Yeah, we appreciate everyone joining, and please do keep in touch on the last slide there. If there's anything you'd like to explore further, if you wanted any more information about what we've discussed, feel free to get in touch with Catherine or myself.
Absolutely. And I will be closing the webinar console tool, so I think you all will be automatically dismissed out. Once again, thank you all very much.
Thank you. Thank you for organizing, Ali.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Oh, let me see.